So, hello, live stream. This is the first Soup Inc. literary stream, and you are very welcome to our writing group setup. It's very intimate. It feels like we're all sitting in the same living room, even though we're not. So to sort of get things going, before we do any of our readings, I'm just going to get everyone to introduce themselves. So, seeing as I'm already speaking, and I'm probably the only person who is featured on Soup Inc. to date. I'm Hannah. I am studying journalism in Dublin, and I actually don't know what I'm reading yet for Friday, which is fun. So, future me will have sussed that out. And yeah, I do a little bit of short fiction, some poetry, and anything else that I can sort of try my hand at. And yeah, whoever else wants to jump in, go on ahead. Anyone?
It's like that awkward moment in school when the teacher says, does anyone have any ideas?
I know, and I'm always the teacher in this situation where I'm like, okay, let's go.
Well, I can go for the sake of alphabetical,
Yeah, do it alphabetically. That's
yeah, because Hannah, and then Andrew. So I'm Andrew. I'm from Armagh, and I'm currently doing a master's in creative writing in Queen's, at Queen's in Belfast, which is cool. Still a fairly recent convert to the cult of writing. I've only really been writing properly, I'd say, for about a year. So mostly short fiction, a little bit of poetry. I did some more journalistic stuff when I was back at university, and I would definitely do some more of that. But mostly just absurd stuff. That's me.
Okay, so am I next in the alphabet?
Mm-hmm.
I've never been great at alphabets. Genuinely, I always have to do it in my head whenever
you
it
sing
comes
the
up.
song.
Yeah. My name's Deirdre. I'm from Donegal. I live in Belfast, and I mostly write kind of nonfiction and memoir-ish stuff. That sounds a bit too dramatic. I'm not really.
You look very young to be writing a memoir.
Yeah, memoir is definitely the wrong word. That sounds like
you're on your deathbed.
Yeah, that sounds like I've lived a much more interesting life than I have. My memoir would consist of like, I woke up and I meant to get out of bed, but I actually stayed in bed for 4 more hours. That kind of thing. Those kind of exciting things. So what's a better word? I don't know. Personal essays. That's also kind of gross. You know what I mean? Writing about my life. Not very imaginative, clearly. I have been trying to write a wee bit more fiction. Again, as well as Hannah, haven't decided what I'm actually going to read for the live stream. So if I'm feeling brave, you'll know if I've picked a fiction thing. And if I am reading something that's based in my own life, you'll think, oh, she chickened out. So that's me.
I can go next because I've just realised I'm under Joss's.
I know, that's so funny. This is a series of writers who don't know the alphabet.
So I'm not, in fact, Joss McGuckin. I am Tegan. I'm currently studying in doing the MA in poetry at Queen's. I started writing poetry when I was 16-ish. And then I kind of got more into critical writing during uni. So I came to the MA thinking I wanted to do critical writing, but I've been trying my hand at poetry again recently. So I don't know what I'm reading yet on Friday, but it will be poetry, hopefully. I think that's it, really. Yeah, that sounds very mysterious, but I don't know what else to say.
Okay, I'm Orla. Currently I'm in Dublin doing a Irish writing masters. The likelihood is that I'll be reading poetry on Friday, and probably work in progress stuff. So I don't know how coherent that will be, unless I go really conservative and just do things that I've already written a few years ago. I've sort of not been writing that much this year, I think, partly because I was writing a dissertation and moving to Dublin, but also I don't know, I've not been emotionally traumatized, so I found it harder to write. But then because of this, we've started the work in progress thing, so hopefully something good will come out of that, and you'll get to hear that Friday.
A sudden smell of peaches. Walking in the park with you, and not a peach in sight. You say, "This brings me back to something." There's your grandmother spitting peaches from a tin into the pudding. She spins one out for Lily, who tastes the nectar of that aeroplane peach, juice running down your chin. And there's your grandfather in his last days, head held by his wife. The can lifted to his lips to sip that honeyed sap as you look on, trying to forget. And we walk on through the park, holding hands, as the sky grows dark.
This story is about my granda, who died at the start of this year. My granda spent the last 5.5 years of his wonderful life dying. He had been doing great for his age until he wasn't anymore. He was never quite the same after my granny died, but still he kept on, playing golf and going to football matches. He even learned how to cook from books his children got him, with titles like How to Boil an Egg and Cooking for Blokes. The beginning of the end came with the death of his older brother Jerry. In his final years, he would sit in confusion and address questions to the room. Where's Peggy? Where's Jerry? Where's Mammy? Where's Daddy? They're dead, Daddy, my mother would tell him. What's wrong? He would ask. Mammy would reassure him, but he wouldn't be convinced. Something's wrong, he would say mournfully to himself. It was sad to see him, having lived such a life and achieved so much. But all these memories floated just slightly beyond his grasp. He was always a great man for his story, and could sometimes be prompted to recall them. Picture him now, tiny and frail in his dressing gown. I ask him to tell me about the landslide. The landslide? A flicker of recognition. Remember, the story about your daddy and the letter he wrote and the landslide. Granda grew up in Killybegs. His father was a tailor called Charlie O'Doherty. His mother Annie's people came from Glencolmkill, and that's where they spent their summer holidays. Where was your mammy from, Granda? Glencolmkill. And did you like going to Glencolmkill? No, I wanted to be at home, playing football with my friends. And do you remember the letter your father wrote? About the landslide? Charlie was a superstitious man and barely literate. He was working in Killybegs while his wife and 2 sons were on their holidays in Glencolmkill. He had a dream, which he interpreted as a premonition, that a landslide would sweep his sons into the sea. He wrote a frantic letter to warn them. The letter was greeted with unanimous derision. Can you see them? Sitting around the kitchen table on a soft summer morning, someone reading the letter aloud, them all laughing at the Egypt back in Killybegs. It was quickly forgotten. Weeks later, Charlie joined his family in Glencolmkill. One day they're all to go somewhere. To the Silver Strand in Mallinbeg. The beach with all the steps. And you and Jerry and your daddy went to get a hackney car. Isn't that right, Granda? That's right. There's some amazement in his voice as you guide him back through his memories, to his childhood. And who drove the hackney car? Reuben Blaine. The name comes firmly as he has gotten back into the rhythm of the story. It's a name you'd remember, I suppose, even almost 90 years later. And then what happened? Started to rain then. His voice is certain now. We kept walking, but it got heavier, so we took shelter. Where did you take shelter, Granda? The green ditch. In a quarry, and a man came by. Was he by himself? He had a dog with him. And what did the man tell you? He told Daddy that this area was prone to landslides and it was dangerous. And he told us to get out, and we made our way down to the road. And the man was carrying Jerry, and Daddy was carrying me, and it was lashing rain. And then we heard the loudest sound I've ever heard, and we turned around and the hill was falling into the sea, just where we'd been standing. In that moment, he is a little boy again, terrified as the world seems to be ending around him. And soon, his world will end. Soon, he will be gone, and all we will have are his stories. Thank you so much.
We're not really reading stuff from week to week. We just like have conversations about writing, which means that there's no pressure to have stuff like on the desk, I guess. There's no deadlines. There's no like you have to do this and write about this theme. We're all sort of keeping ourselves under wraps, which means it's very exciting. I'm excited for Friday purely because I'm excited to see how everyone, like what everyone's voice is, because it's fun hearing people's thoughts, but it will be even more fun sort of knowing how you think about things and then seeing how that transfers into how you write. So yeah, I've prepared a few questions for discussion to sort of let people know, I guess, what this little group's about. Everyone, like, this is open invite as well, so if anyone is interested in joining, send me a message and you'll be added to our little group chat, which usually is only active in the day of the meeting that we're having, pushing it back an hour or so, because the thing is, no one has to be punctual whenever they're a writer. It's a trait, I think. Everyone's a little bit yeah. You know, we're too busy observing. Oh no, Orla's gone. Hold on. No,
Wait, what? I'm here.
you're here. Andrew's gone. Sorry. You
It
moved.
just looks so similar. It's hard to tell it.
We do look
Yeah, no, we do.
same
Yeah, a
person.
lot in common.
Hold on. Let's see. Oh, he's back.
This disappeared, yeah.
Are you okay?
I'm
We
good.
can't-
Yeah, I fell off, but I got.
It's okay. Crawled
Did
back
you
onto
hurt
the
yourself?
What? See any of you?
You can't see. We can't see you either.
Well, that's fair.
There we go. I did stop recording there briefly. Okay. So discussion questions.
Sorry, I forgot to say, by the way, that I'm going to read a story. Feels like everyone else is specifying what they're reading, so I should. So I will be reading a short story.
Is excellent.
Back to you, Hannah.
Thank you. In the studio.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're just gonna have a chat now. Also, I'm gonna edit half this stuff out because no one needs to see us me narrating what I'm about to do. Like, no one needs that. So what have people been enjoying to watch or to read recently? We had this conversation before I hit record.
Can I start with like a very like lowbrow, low pressure thing?
Yes, please.
So, my family, I'm from a very middle class rural family. So, as with many of those, we listen to the Archers very regularly, because it is like it's like my life. But so because I've been listening to it since I was really small, even though since I've been away at university, I don't listen to it because normally between 10 and 11 on a Sunday I'm asleep. If there's like a big storyline happening, my mum will ring me and go, "Oh, you need to switch it on," or will like tell me about it afterwards. And this week there have been I've not listened to the Archers since I moved to Dublin probably. But I was at home all of lockdown, so I was keeping up to date, and I checked back in. And basically, I hope this won't give anyone any spoilers. So if you have not listened to the recent episode of The Archers and you're going to, stop listening. But it's one of there's a kid called Rory whose mum died of cancer a really, really long time ago in The Archers, like probably when I was 7, so a good like 12 years ago. And his dad, who had an affair with his mum, brought him up with his stepmom, actual wife. It's very complicated. There's been years of this. But basically, the kid turned 18 and he'd got like a recorded, his mum, when she was dying, when he was 4, had recorded like a CD being like, "Happy 18th birthday." Like, and so I didn't listen to this episode because I was busy. And my mum rang me the other day and essentially described the whole thing to me, and she like almost word for word, she's got a great memory. And I was cooking some pasta in my kitchen, and I was like sobbing, like ugly crying in my kitchen to my mum describing the events of the most recent Archers episode to me, which is, you know, maybe not like a cool exciting highbrow thing, considering I'm doing an Irish Lit Masters. The Archers being my thing is maybe it's maybe off brand, but that was, I think it's the most recent emotional reaction that I've had to a piece of art or writing.
Mm-hmm. That seems like a good place to start. And like, I've heard of this thing, The Archers, but like, I like no idea. I want to say it's a radio play, is it?
Yeah, it's essentially like a radio soap opera, but it's
Right.
it's very rural. Like they live in like a village. There is nothing nearby, but it's in the way that soap operas have, like, when you watch it or listen to it for a certain amount of time, you sort of end up, you can't disconnect from it because you're like, you know, it's like people that you know, like, you know, the whole family histories of all of these people. Like, my granny's been listening to The Archers for 50 years.
Isn't it like the longest running serial in the world?
Yeah, it is. I think it started in like the 50s or something ridiculous, and they're still going strong.
That's insane.
There's a woman who is one of my favorite screenwriters. His name is Sally Wainwright, and she wrote Scott and Bailey. She wrote a lot of like crime dramas, and Gentleman Jack recently. She works a lot with Saran Jones, and she started out writing for The Archers. That was like her first job whenever she was like 22. Was writing for The Archers in like the 80s, which is the coolest thing. Like,
there are
I'd
so
like
many
that
people
job.
who do it. Yeah, and it's also filmed in Birmingham, which is near where I live in the UK. And like loads of famous actors have stuff. Like Tamsin Greig she's Debbie in The Archers, for anyone on the stream who is a big Archers stan.
Yeah, the Archers stans.
It's been on since 1951.
That's a long time.
Maybe we can rival it. Literary stream.
If we start now, we probably like keep going till
we just do a continuous stream. Like this is it forever for the rest of time.
60 years.
On a podcast that I listen to, they have if any of you listen to Ellis James and John Robbins, if you don't, I highly recommend it. They're so lovely. They're I just love them both so much. But they have a feature because it's a radio show that I listen to the podcast of, and it's BBC One, and they have a feature every week called Unsung Hero, where they have someone who's like involved in something well known, but they're probably not personally well known. And one of my favorite ones was a few months ago. They had the person who does like, I guess, the Foley for the archers, and like all the things, like they had a game where the guests put all the things to simulate these sounds, where, well, not simulate the sound, but you know, create the sound to simulate a thing, and they to make the sound of a calf being born, which is a gross image.
Oh, it happens all the time on the Archers.
Wow, God, truly another world. But to simulate this sound, they I think is that they put a hand in a big bowl of yogurt, and to create the sound of a kind of big metal farm gate opening, they open an ironing board.
I'm never going to be able to unhear that now. Every time I listen, I'm going to be like, the ironing board. Classic David and Ruth.
I love, like, the job of being a Foley is just the coolest thing. There's a guy I follow on TikTok who does it, and it's just so interesting because whenever you just have the sounds, it can be anything, and then when you have the visual, it just becomes like the reality of it is.
Yeah.
And it's just the imagination is so good. Like whenever you're given
telling in another way.
Blackberry Blues. On September's cusp, the long green lane would darken and bloom with blackberries. Then, bundling you up in the big blue buggy, your grandparents would set out with milk cans, jam jars, and a big blue bucket on your lap. The frenzied picking began. Nothing but blackberries would fill the jars, from small plots to those big blue blobs staring up at you. You'd be thrilled at picking one, and between chubby fingers squeezing until the juices ran, staining your hands. Satisfied with the squandered juices, you pop 1, 2, 3 and more into your mouth, marvelling at the sweetness of some and the bitter bite of others. It never occurred to your grandparents they weren't wise, trusting the last of summer's gifts to afford.
Hello. This is a short story called The Inaudible Treading of Ducks. It starts with some weird noises. Eerk. The sound a disgusted buzzer makes. An accelerating lorry as it passes below. Swoosh. Cars. Oh, Dedindaria. Sounds of conversation at the lights. A whining motorbike shoots past as the green man's fanfare is beeped out. Inaudible. Ducks braving the nearby canal, treading purposefully in the February water. I can't see them, but I'm thinking about them. Above, a giant crane slowly shifts its leer leftways. I watch it, to be sure it's not looking at me. From the construction site, all morning there is a constant tumbling and some occasional jangling. A loud song, bassy, unrecognisable, blares from a passing car. Luckily, there is no hospital nearby. An ambulance would be deafening. Beep beep, beep beep. I sit up. A noise from inside the flat? This can't be good. A bitonal repetition, a signal from one of the machines, no doubt. They must have put it on this morning. After about 15 seconds, the beeping resumes, so I investigate. In the kitchen, I see the beeping, flashing, washing machine. I stare intensely, almost sarcastically. Fuck. Useless to stop the noise, I sneak back into the sitting room and drink some water. Back at the window, things are much the same, but I wince each time I hear the beeping washing machine. Hopefully it stops, eventually. Below, the road is brown with rain. I look above the roof, across the street at the embattled mast of the cricket ground, a Victorian spire long stained by the rain. There is a bird, fluttering and curious, on the spire, and I watch it for a long time. When it flies off, I get up again and stretch my back and legs, leaning forward. Alone in the flat all day. Again. I don't really see the problem though. When they come home late, they apologise, explaining how busy their days were, and asking, "You weren't too bored at home today, were you?" I wasn't, no. I love having the space to myself, to be honest, but I don't tell them that. I just make some reasonable noises. My business is my own. When I have the flat all to myself, which is most days, once I hear the front door slam for the second time, I am awake. I stalk through each room of the house, ensuring the correctness of my solitude. After that, I'll probably sit on the sofa for a while and wander. My morning routine. It starts to rain outside, and the splashing frequency of the passing traffic magnifies. The washing machine is still beeping, but I rest my head and close my eyes for a while. I dream about summer and walking through fresh grass, but I am haunted by an image of danger and awake suddenly. The beeping has finally stopped. It's still the middle of the morning, and I jump up. I'm ahead of schedule. The flat I live in is not big, or at least I've lived in bigger places. I've been sleeping in the living room, and fortunately I have enough room in there to do my exercises every day. I lunge and jump around in front of the large TV in the fourth floor living room because I need to keep in shape, and I go a bit crazy if I don't do anything in the day. Later in the afternoon, I look at some books for a long time. Books to help develop my theories. I develop my theories most afternoons. In the next apartment, someone is making a phone call. Anita, her! Anita, her! Not the neighbour. Some commotion on the street, as usual. I wait a while before going to look. The woman with the black umbrella is there again, in her bright blue coat. She bobs, casual but awkward, in the street's canal as others passed by, avoiding her path. What is she up to? I see them now. A woman and a child carrying a shiny rectangular object with an orange coat. They bundle into a car. Surely... No, I think. They don't even glance towards the blue-coated lady, and I rule out this theory. But there are many others, going in and out of the shops like a traditional dance, as if it's a daily offering. My mind races at the possibilities, logically deciphering the data in front of my eyes. If there's one thing I could really brag about, it's my immense sense of logic. My theories start to grow cogent as the patterns clearly emerge. By the time they come home, I am delirious with thought. I have grown expectant, prepared a transformational speech, my soliloquy, to a select audience. I want to tell them about my theory of how it all works, that I have finally figured it out. We are saved. But I'm always too distracted by their questions once they get home. Pestering, bothersome, too excited. They are kind, no doubt, but they don't understand, and they don't want to understand. So I tell them nothing. Instead, I pout as we wait for dinner to be ready. I pout, but my passion for theories wanes in the evening when I dine. They always cook, otherwise I would literally starve in this flat. I eat each bite of the warm meal with intention and presence, and afterwards am filled with a contentment and satisfaction so infinite that I can't help but express it. I stretch out on the sofa and laugh with the others. playing games and relaxing. They are nice people, but I still prefer when I have this kingdom to myself. Most days pass like this. Sometimes the solitude turns on me, or maybe it's the space. These days are dreadfully anxious. I bound from room to room, trying to fill the space, seeking more. On those days it feels like a jail cell, and I try to remember the joy and freedom of fresh air down by the canals, watching those ducks. It's been months now since a day like that, and it feels like forever. Those nights after the anxious days, I'll poison them. I'll just be in really rotten form all evening, like a pishmar. But, to be fair to them, they put up with it. The days get sunnier, but then winter comes back again suddenly, covering the street. The snow is quickly dirtied. Maybe a week later, the wind rattles the window for hours, a banshee wailing through the tenement housing cracks. I stare at the wall for hours on end. I think about my ancestors, my parents, their parents, and so on, as far back as I can try to conceive of. What did they do with their days? What would they think about me? In spite of everything, I have a very strong sense of self. I know who I am, and I am proud of it. I don't interest myself in the business of my peers. I certainly don't judge. And I don't fear the judgment of my elders. But I wonder. There must be a past, a time that was different. I have strange dreams about it. I remember my mother, and really, I didn't always live here. I remember that time too, the lived past. But in my dreams, I live in a great chess game. A grand, complex, adventurous world in which I am more than just a divine ornament. I believe that these dreams are the memory in my blood. The truth is, I'll probably never know much about them. Know this though, I'm not a prisoner. It's not like that at all. I could leave any time I wanted through the exit of my choosing. They would wish me well, and what a pleasure it was to have me. Come back any time you want, old friend. I can imagine them saying it as I bid them a courteous farewell, so trust me when I say that I could leave at any time. But have you been out there? It's Glasgow in February, for fuck's sake. I'm not mad in the head, going out in that, even just for a couple of hours. It's dreary and it's cold, and I know it, for I've been out round Glasgow at this time of year, and I know exactly what it's like. Foundered. Plus, I tend to get quite overwhelmed when I go out into the real world. It's so noisy, and I get stressed out by all the faces, the smells. When we all go out together, they make sure to keep me close. They know as well as anyone that I'm a bit cagey out on the street. Once we get to the park, it's usually grand. I stroll along the riverside and hear the sweet rush of water from a comforting distance. I watch them as they step over the fence and walk between trees to the river's edge, and I follow cautiously. Since the incident with the ducks, we don't go by the canal anymore. I always hope they've maybe forgotten about it this time, or that it's all blown over by now anyway, but they never do. Tricky. Each time I would play the whole thing oblivious, but give me another chance and it's going down exactly how it did the last time. The park officer was so upset. If we're lucky, we don't meet any dogs, but we do meet some strange stares which I never fail to return. People are weird. After a walk like that and a nice dinner, I'll usually acquiesce to a cuddle. She's so needy, but I do give the best cuddles. We all sit around in the gentle lamplight and talk until the television pours its blue light over us, lounging on the sofa. The next day I contemplate and graze and do some exercises to keep from getting too fat. Everyone's got their path, right? I guess I didn't choose this, but hey, who gets to choose their life? Those people down there on that street have the same free will as I, in a way. Would I swap with one of them? Would I swap my life for something else? I could be in a land far away. I could live in the countryside with a garden. But I could just as easily be in the gutter. I could be dead. I don't often think about it, but I know it. I've known others that died before they got to my age. I could be miserable, and I'm not miserable. Not really. So no, I tell myself, I wouldn't swap with a single one of them. My life goes on like this, until one day they leave the window open. It's warmer now, and outside the sky is blue and promising. I guess he was airing out the room and he forgot to close it. All morning I sit on the sofa adjacent to the window, just watching. Nothing comes in except some airborne insects, flies. I ignore them, captivated. I'm thinking about the fact that, of course, they care deeply about me, and to a large extent they do understand my condition, the manner in which I'm predisposed, behaviour-wise, so to speak. How can I put it? They know what I'm like. And yet, he left the window open. It's there, like that. I'm here, observing it, the extended continuum of potential personal space. And once again, I'm wondering. Fine. Maybe I wouldn't swap with anyone down on the street. Maybe I don't want to hop down the stairwell and dart aimlessly through the streets of Glasgow myself. Everyone's got their path. But what is it? Who am I? And what of this? A few times throughout the day, I venture as far as the ledge. Each of these patrols serves purely to inform, to enhance the data, reconnaissance. I look at the roof tiles across the street and see the stone ledge beyond the windowsill. It looks dry all up the street. I get a thrill from these missions, making detailed observations on the altered dimensions of existence on a truly unique day. Dancing excitedly around the living room, I try to square my new reality with the theories I have developed in my life so far. Today has arrived upon me like a judgment day, an opportunity to demonstrate my peerless, devastating logic. It might take me the whole day, but I will find an answer to the question which was, until today, simply objective, a theoretical possibility, unknowable, really. We can wonder about these questions, but truly they are unknowable until they are loaded with the potency of reality, which, on this glorious day only, this most existential question is. O possibility, my godly friend and teacher! I am pacing erratically now and intermittently sprawling on the carpet for dramatic effect. I roll around and snap up, searing my gaze menacingly across the room. A decision must be made. I draw myself to the tall mirror perched on the floor, adjacent to the open window. Then I start to feel hungry. The open window brings the smell of spring into the living room, and the wooden flooring underneath me is fresh. I admire myself in the mirror. The world is a mystery. Sometimes it feels like things are getting better. Sometimes it feels like they are getting worse. The sun shines in behind me, still just a folded strap of light. I turn away from the mirror for a moment. I come back to the mirror, my eyes twinkling. I remember that I am divine. I stare into my eyes and finally shrug. Not today, you beautiful bastard. I look down. Pause. In the kitchen, a new beeping. I look up again and slink off into the kitchen to investigate.
What I was going to say is how interesting it is whenever you're taught to write an essay in school versus what literary essays that, or even like how you're taught, like whenever you're taught how to sort of read and write critically in academia in general, is nothing the way the kind of essays that you would be reading if you bought a book of essays or you bought an essay collection. I think that's something that is, you sort of have to learn as you do it, I guess. Like I know that one of the recommended readings for one of my classes was Susan Sontag's essay collection, and I was like, oh, to read book essays, and they're great. They're just great. They're just great to read, and it doesn't feel like you're reading academic literature. It feels literary, and I think that's something that's very interesting whenever you're looking at different types of writing, because yeah, I don't know, that's just a thought that I've had recently.
I suppose, like, sorry, Deirdre.
Go on.
The difference there between school and actual essays is kind of like first hand, second hand. Like if you're in school and you're saying essays, you're just saying like, oh, this person said that, and I mostly agree except for this. And then if you're writing an essay, you have to tell them what Andrew thinks, and that's harder. Like, it's probably way harder.
Well, I had in my time at university, anytime I see a tweet that's like, you know, academic writing is purposefully like exclusionary and hard to read, I'm like, yeah, it's not that I'm just a big idiot. Thank you for the validation, internet. And I genuinely, in my 3 years at the DCU studying international relations, a phrase that I still can't say clearly to this day, one of the most influential things I came away with was in my final ever class, I think, a brilliant lecture I had, Catherine Connolly brought up this concept of autoethnography. I think that's what it's called. Really worried that that's a completely different thing, but anyway. And it's that it's a different approach from that kind of supposedly kind of objective view that's so standard in academic writing, and it points to the fact that you cannot be unbiased. You are writing from your perspective, and if you are doing academic writing, you are likely coming from a place of privilege, and that is probably like influencing the outcomes. And I don't know, if it was because this lecturer brought Prosecco in for our last class. So maybe I was a little buzzed, but I was like, oh my God, she's right. They have been presenting things as objective facts when they are like very opinion based.
I have this issue so much. Sorry, Hannah, go ahead.
No, we're letting you go on ahead.
I have this issue so much because there's so many. I'm not gonna say names of critics because although they won't watch it, maybe they work at Queen's. I can't say anymore because I'll drop myself in it. But there are some critics of Irish poetry who I read a lot of and who come up a lot, but who I don't necessarily agree with on their rating of some poets. But the issue that I have mostly with it, like I'm all for critics not having the same opinion as me, because half the time I'll change my mind from reading it anyway. But a massive issue I have is when, particularly in close writing circles where loads of like poets will also write criticism and writers will also write criticism, but they're writing stuff on their friends and sort of neglect to mention in any of the essay or anything like that, and sort of go, oh, by the way, though, we are pals, or by the way, I did edit this for them. And I always think it feels sort of not necessarily disingenuous, but you're just sort of missing out quite a key piece of the puzzle, I think.
Well, it's
when
like
you don't put that in.
It's a question of like who makes good things good.
Yeah.
Like it's because someone with authority, usually in academia, said it was good. But if they're friends with all the people, like that's the way in. Then you have to be in the sort of the gentleman's club of literature.
Yeah.
My story is quite recently written, and it is about a father and his son. And I think it's called Half Night. There's a rebellion in the ranks one evening. You watch it all happen from the crack in the door. You make a mental note to add fixing the crack to your to-do list. This list never shortens. And you imagine you will die with 100 forgotten 10-minute tasks jotted on the Notes app on your phone. Get rid of the dead cactus in the bathroom. Bleed the radiator in the spare room. Fix the crack in your bedroom door. For now, however, you're happy for the crack. You hold your breath and watch. Your youngest, 5 or 6 at this stage, is working hard on the other side of the door. You put him to bed a little over an hour ago, sat beside him, and read him a chapter from that same dogged book his brother had loved years before. He settled his head onto the pillow, fighting heavy eyes and your opposition to reading another chapter. You had said he needed to go to sleep. He had given in and nestled into the duvet. Now he is very much awake, his eyes bright in the strange borrowed light from downstairs. Your wife had sent you to check on him. At first you had disputed her suggestion to be comfy in your place under your own duvet to budge. She asked again, and you gave in, making sure to throw the blanket off her legs in a benevolent act of vengeance. You tell her you're sure he's asleep, and sigh as you shuffle across your room. The floorboards are uneven, but by now you know the choreography of how to walk without making a sound. He had been quiet for so long, you were sure you'd be walking in on some sleeping figure with a flushed face and sweaty little head. But you had paused before opening your bedroom door, perhaps to inspect that old crack, and now, here you are, eye pressed against it. He has taken it upon himself to barricade the landing with books. He has all the big tomes from the bottom shelf of your bookcase. You know the ones, all those big dusty books you acquire over the years, more to own than to read. And here he was, 6 years old, and making better use of them than you ever had. In the years to come, you will learn that your youngest has a skewed perception of what domestic disobedience is. You will come to think of rebellion as reading late into the night. His penance will be his own peeled face in the morning, and his hair which will stick out sideways well into his teenage years. These years of self-sentenced sleeplessness will remain, in his mind, completely inconspicuous. You will never know whether he cottoned on to the fact that his torch batteries never ran out. But all that is still to come. For now you watch him, small and stocky, building his little towers. You wonder what is running through his mind. He is quiet and clever. He will become quieter and cleverer when he gets older, then louder, then stupid, then quiet and cleverest. He does not sleep well at night, but is not scared of the dark. You think he probably gets that from you. Later, when things do get loud, you think back to this moment like suspended animation. How did we get here, you will ask yourself when you find him passed out on his bed with his shoes still on. You'll feel like you don't know him at all. In reality, you don't know him now either. You open the door and say, "Back to bed, son," and he says, "Okay, Dad," like he knew you were there all along. Later, but not as late as when things get loud, you will lie in bed and look at the strange blue of the mid-September night. You always thought half-light made an evening more meaningful. You fell in love with your wife that way. You feel her shift beside you and think about driving with her in the car that night you went to the sea. She had said, "I'm not tired," and you had said, "Let's go." It was long before she said things like, "Check the boys are sleeping," or "Have you fixed that old crack in our bedroom door?" You had parked the car, and the moon was abeam, painting everything silver. Your wife had said, "Look at that," and you said, "I love you." This is another suspended moment. You push back further into the vestibule of memory. The night your own dad had roused you from sleep and silently guided your small body downstairs. He put his finger to his lips and had said, "Look at that." And you had looked at the window to a silent world of white snow. He dressed you in boots and a scarf and all the necessary equipment needed, and together you copied out a Pollock painting in footprints. That in between sleep and awakeness, that half night, half day, felt like running away, even if you only made it as far as the end of your garden. One day you might do that for your youngest. Wake him up in the middle of the night and show him something wonderful, like an old fox foraging in the dustbins, or the only constellation you know the name of, or a storm that makes the sky go swollen purple. You don't, but you might. What happens is he gets bigger and you stay the same. He learns more and then somehow learns less. He'll stop reading during the small hours and start coming home during them. His quiet schemes of literature lost to blundering obscenities as he stubs his toe yet again on the stairs. Instead of smuggling torchlight, he will leave the big light on, shamelessly. He doesn't hide things like he used to. He doesn't hide the things that he used to. Or maybe you get bad at finding them. This happens a lot during the loud times. He is able to work it all out himself. You lose all the magic in your hands. You never made a big deal out of being a man, never felt the manliness within yourself. In fact, you never felt too much within yourself. You went to work, did the job and came home. You would eat dinner, help with homeworks. By the evening, fall into light sleep or read a page or two of a book or make love to your wife. It was a small life, but by then you were happy. You loved your children. You wish you could say it more. "All right, Dad." "All right," meaning I love you. "Do you know if there's any milk left?" "If it's not in the fridge, you'll have to go and get some yourself," meaning I'm proud of you. "What's the name of your man who sells the spare bits of stuff at the back of his garage?" "Gary McMahon," meaning Gary McMahon. "Aye, that's him." You find your youngest one morning curled up in the doorstep like a stray cat. You will not know what to do, so you will place a blanket over him for when he stirs. In that situation, your wife would ask, "Why are you leaving him lying on the cold floor?" And you would not have the words to say, "I want to know him as he is." Before you met your wife, your own dad got sick and mean. He stopped getting excited about things and then stopped altogether. You don't think much about it now. You do not know how to talk about it. You look at your son in the doorway. You think about when he was small and you watched him through the crack in the door. You still feel like you're watching him through a crack. He is not happy. He waters down his stories and his woes for you, but he's not happy. And he is so beautiful. And when he sleeps, it is like an encounter of second childishness. You want to bundle him up and say, "I understand." You don't. You think, "I used to know how to fix things." But really you were just very good at making lists. What you do not realise is you've become very good at patience. You know your children well enough. You know they will come when they are ready. You hear the click of a front door. You turn around and see your youngest, sheepish and grey-faced. He does not look happy. He never really looks happy these days. The weight of the world seemed to fall on his shoulders the day he turned 18. "All right, Dad?" "Morning," meaning I love you. It's not a question, but he stops and looks a bit lost. "Cup of tea," you say, meaning cup of tea. He looks relieved, and then a bit sad, and then something close to grateful. "Aye, cup of tea." Thank you.
Hi, my name is Edie Simpson and I am a 19-year-old writer in progress from Belfast. I'm studying English and drama currently at Trinity College Dublin, and my hope in the future is to do a lot more writing and kind of just get my voice out there. I've written several plays this year. One of them was performed in the Lyric Theatre in Belfast in March, right before coronavirus, so we were very lucky to get that put on the Naughton stage. And another one was part of the No Touching Theatre Festival in Belfast in September, so that was great. And I'm currently working on a play to be performed as part of the Players Society in Trinity, and writing a lot of poetry on the side. So today I'm going to share with you some of my poetry, and I hope you enjoy it. I've just put it over a video of kind of the last few months to a year, what I've been getting up to and what it's been like living in Dublin and kind of getting to know the writing community there. My Instagram handle is Electric Bananas, a little bit random, I know, and my Twitter handle is just Edie Simpson. So I'll put them up if anybody is interested at all in any of my writing, and I hope you enjoy all the work from all the various writers this evening. Everyone is so talented, and this writing group has really fueled me forward this term and inspired me to keep on writing and to keep getting my voice out there. So if you're inspired by any of the things that you see tonight, just let us know, and we'd always love to have more people join our group. So yeah, I hope you enjoy my poetry, and I hope you enjoy the live stream. Thanks.
Lucid. You call me, finally, just to say the groceries are going mouldy. I haven't got much to say, except my wisdom tooth is coming through and it hurts a lot. You tell me it'll be alright, because everything always is until it's the end. It might very well be the end now, because I hear you calling for my mother, and my egoism comes crawling out of its crooked crab shell back to plague my brain. I wish you had called my name instead. We walk with blistered toes, trekking through the town's tarmac-covered streets. The waves break, and all you repeat are bitter incantations of aching, drunken dreams. You want to bathe in pools of carmine and cardinal until it sucks your breath away. It's summer now, so you stand at the top of your glorious garden with your hands in his hair, his curly black mop and his button-down shirts, your gorgeous hands and abundance of love. I know this is only a dream, because I haven't seen you in years, and this time you cry out my name and bid me run to you. Bathed in the light of the summer air, you hold my heart on a chain in your hand. I cut my toe on a broken bottle, and I run to you like I'll never love again. At the birthday party. You pulled up in a Cadillac. Or was it a Peugeot? Tip-tapping your clippity-cloppity heels on the driveway stones. You know, I remember this because I was ignoring you and looking only at myself, shamelessly solipsistic under the beaded curtain of the doorway. 2 tabby cats prowling on the chaise longue. A handful of green olives strewn across an empty plate. You put your fingers deep into your pocket and drew them out, almost erotically. An offering awaits me in the form of a Marlborough Gold. A pause. I said yes, of course, but only because people in the movies do it. Only so I'd look as cool as I thought you wanted me to. Only so my disinterested stare could be tactfully rearranged on my face to unveil the infatuation that lay below. When you told me my adolescent lips were as close to heaven as you'd ever get, I scoffed. I've held a grain of salt in the palm of my hand and known that it carried more heaven than what you gave me ever will. Faded in the light of the summer air, you turn. It's okay. You can wash your hands of me in the morning.
Parliament.
I feel like we spend a lot of time talking about academic essays. So yeah, I'm asking like all of you, do you find that whenever you are sort of sitting down to write, or you feel like that sort of inkling that you're like, I kind of want to try and like write this and try and make something out of this, do you feel like it is kind of like a different part of your brain? Because I know whenever I write creatively, I don't feel tired after doing it. Like I might feel tired if I like sit and like for a few hours and write stuff, but I feel like I'm creating something, whereas whenever I'm writing an essay I just feel tired, and it will be interesting, but I'm exhausted after, whereas whenever I create something new, it's more exciting. I'm wondering if it's the same for you guys.
Yeah, I almost feel like I find it really hard to sit down and write an essay because I feel like it's very much like the front of your head and you have to like think so hard about it. Whereas when I'm writing mainly poetry, I hate when people say this because it's not really entirely true that it just comes to you, but sometimes it does, and it just feels effortless, I guess. Even if you are sitting for hours, it's still like at the end of it, when I've kind of actually written something substantial, I'm like, oh, that really didn't feel like it took all of my brain power and zapped me like an essay does. And then yeah, you do have that like feeling of accomplishment afterwards that I just don't think an essay brings. Like like an academic essay, I usually feel like, thank goodness that's done. Whereas when I've written a poem, I'm like, oh my god, I did something. So yeah, I think it's really different.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think the only thing I would say is different for me, like completely what you said, Tegan, about it doesn't feel, there's not the same concept of effort and exhaustion. But as a result of that, I don't necessarily feel like I've been productive or that I've done much after I've, if you write a few hundred words or start a story or get into a story, it won't maybe be for a few days until a few days later that I look at it and I'm like, I did some writing. Nobody told me that, like, But definitely I agree, Hannah. Yeah, for sure. It's a different part of the brain. And like probably moreover, I feel like a different person every time I sit down to write anyway.
I think that with that, like I do think that I feel a bit drained sometimes with writing the things I actually want to write, because I will sit down and be like, oh, maybe I'll sit down for half an hour and write something, but then it'll be like 3 hours later and I'm like, I can't stop until I'm at the end, or this idea will leave me forever. And it's not as if I'm having great ideas. It's just, they're all I've got. Whereas when it comes to, I hope that that maybe someday in the future I'll sit down to academic writing with gusto. But every time I'm just like, oh God, like I have to, I remember when I was in secondary school and we were having, we were in science classes and I was never a science gal, and they would tell you, okay, you have to do this experiment to prove this. And I'd be like, but everybody knows that to be true anyway. Why do you have to do an experiment? And I felt kind of the same about writing essays, when you'd have to cite things, that it was like, if I don't reference this, they'll be like, well, how do you know this? And I'm like, everybody knows that.
This story is a little bit of fiction, which I'm not really used to, so hopefully it's okay. My first love affair happened when I was 16. Love affair may be putting it a bit strongly. My first boyfriend. The first boy I ever kissed. We were 2 days short of our 6-week anniversary when he broke up with me because he thought I fancied his friend Jack. He was right, in fairness. But Jack was the kind of boy everyone fancied. He wore better clothes than any of his friends and played guitar and was funny and polite and made eye contact when he spoke to you. I had no notion that he'd ever go out with me. I fancied him, surely, but I didn't pine after him. He was like a film star. I fancied Ryan Gosling too, but I didn't think he'd shift me either. My boyfriend was a more realistic prospect. His most appealing quality was that he fancied me. He wasn't bad looking, you just wouldn't pick him out of a group. I don't know why he fancied me. Maybe I was a realistic prospect too. I hadn't spoken to him much, but we were both part of things, floating around each other. I can't remember who told me that he liked me. Certainly not him, but the information was somehow conveyed to me. I wasn't one to miss an opportunity for a new experience. No one had ever wanted me before. I approached the whole thing with anthropological curiosity. When we first kissed, I was mostly thinking about how I'd look back on this moment when I was older, remembering my first kiss. This is what boyfriends and girlfriends do. I would often think, as he put his arm around me, or texted me to say goodnight. I hadn't been so close to a boy before, I thought. It occurs to me now that I had never been so close to anybody before. Not for such a sustained period. Not since I was small, anyway. I found him fascinating. His cultural references were so different from mine. His tough little body. Short back and sides had just come back into fashion, and I particularly loved the back of his head, the vulnerable neck, and the soft, sandy hair. He played football, and I met him after training, shivering on the edge of the pitch in his denim jacket. At school, I had to wear a coat with the crest, which was ugly and rustled like a bag of crisps. When the bell rang, I'd rush to the toilet to apply Rimmel mascara and lipstick, fix my hair and shove my coat into my school bag. Girls in my class would ask me if I was going to meet my boyfriend. I acted sheepish, but I was delighted. "Sorry, I'm pure sweaty," he said, embarrassed when I went to hug him. But I didn't mind. It was mostly November, and we went to the cinema together, and he bought me chips in the Four Lights and held my hand, and I can't remember what we talked about. He told me that he loved me, and I said that I loved him too. It seemed like the appropriate response. I didn't think too much about it. I didn't feel disingenuous or anything, but I don't know if that's how I would have described my feelings. He was getting bored of me anyway, when we had the fight at Kiva's party. He had a fight with me. I was just there. I was wearing a dress with a galaxy print, and I was happy to be there. I shared a bottle of vodka with my friend, and we mixed it with diluted orange. It tasted bad, but I was drunk for the first time, and I liked the feeling. I was sitting up on the kitchen counter talking to Jack. I was more confident because of the vodka and because I had a boyfriend, so no one would think I was trying to ride Jack. I don't know if Jack thought I was trying to ride him. I think he was just being friendly. But then my boyfriend came in and started talking really loudly and being really aggressive and really annoying. Jack kept catching my eye and making me laugh, which made my boyfriend even louder and more aggressive and more annoying. He put his hand around my arm and it hurt, and he marched me outside. Why the fuck are you flirting with Jack? It was so silly and melodramatic, like something that would happen in a bad TV show. I kept laughing. I didn't mean to be cruel. It just seemed funny. It was also cold in my dress, and I didn't understand why we couldn't go back inside where it was warm and fun. "Do you like him?" he asked. "Yes, obviously," I replied. I can see my mistake here, in retrospect. But it seemed like a fair remark. Everyone fancied Jack. And it didn't mean that I didn't fancy my boyfriend. The two things weren't mutually exclusive. We stopped going out, and we didn't talk anymore. And I was sad, because it had been nice to have a boyfriend. To hold his hand, and wear his denim jacket, and go to the cinema with him. And if the film was rubbish, we could mostly just kiss. Honestly, I was mostly annoyed that he embarrassed me in front of everyone at the party, who were watching him, shouting at me through the sliding doors. And for ruining the evening. I'd already taken loads of pictures with my friends, so it was a waste of a perfectly good outfit.
Yeah, so I think a big part of what's really inspired me this year is just being down to my dissertation topic, which was, I feel like I've talked to death about this, so people are probably, if any of my friends are listening, they're going to be like, oh, not again. But I wrote about Seamus Heaney and Sylvia Plath, and that has seemed to have inspired me to be writing about fruit, and for some reason including that grandparents. So I feel like anything that's I'm writing just ends up getting back to that. I don't know how I've written about like my grandparents and Joss's grandparents and a relation to fruit and childhood and memory. And I do think that comes down to Heaney especially a lot. But it's just been really enjoyable. Like it feels really childlike to get back into that and be writing about fruit and just, I don't know, sensory things that aren't really, I'm not really thinking about them too much or like what, you know, they mean. I'm just kind of like describing, and it's been really nice to just kind of like ease my way back into poetry through things that are very familiar, I guess. Yeah.
That's so good. It's just so nice to hear that.
Yeah, so I feel like I wish I had more to talk about what's inspiring me, but
Those are good things though.
I think I've just gotten so stuck on like Plath and Heaney, and I feel like I just need to work through it
Yeah.
until I'm done. And then by the end of this year, I'll probably be like, oh, I never want to read them again or write about fruit again. So yeah.
Yeah.
But you'll have done it, so it's fine.
Exactly.
And whenever they make a collection of your poetry in the future and they go, oh, the Tegan anthology from 2020, this was the fruit era.
Yeah.
You know, when people analyze it and they'll be like, what was she thinking about? Well, she just studied and written her dissertation on these things. So she's drawing inspiration. You think about yourself in a huge scale like that. And then you're like, hey, this is actually pretty cool.
I know, to be fair, I often think about like, I hate my poetry from when I was like 16, 17, 18, but I'm like, you know, when I'm a big poet, this will be like my juvenilia. And I'm like, I wonder what people think about it. I hate it. So
what are other people's current inspirations, and what are you all currently drawing from the well of?
I'm currently I'm in a transition phase, I'm hoping, because previously I've written a lot about myself in relation to other people, or like not necessarily myself, but women in relation to other people, particularly like relationships and how those sorts of things work out. And I'm still writing about that, but I'm trying to transition slightly, and I'm starting to write a lot more, maybe less personal stuff and more character-based stuff. Like I'm trying to make myself, I've mentioned I think before, that I'm trying to make myself write plays this year, but I have low commitment.
That's not true. You have a plan. You've showed us your plan.
However, the plan is as far as we've got so far. But so now what I'm trying to do is, I like to write, I don't like writing straight dialogue. So I'm writing verse to go into the dialogue and the prose of the play. But so because of that, I'm trying to sort of write verse that kind of fits with the characters that I'm creating, rather than just like stuff that is related to me. But it's really hard. So we may not read any of that on Friday. We'll see.
Oh, you go.
I'm reading at the moment and being very inspired by Priest Daddy by Patricia Lockwood, which has done really, really well. So, you know, everyone's heard of it. But I also just like, even not knowing that much about it, just the name and the cover were so great that I was very drawn in. And she's I've never read any of her writing before. But she started out with poetry, and then she's written this book that's about her family and mostly her father, who is a priest. Didn't know you could, if a minister from another kind of Christian denomination wants to become a priest, he can stay married, which I didn't know. Wild. My daddy was going to be a priest, but then he decided not to. So we're two roads diverged in a yellow wood. Can you tell I've read a poem before? But she has maybe because she's a poet, she has such an interesting approach, and she writes in such a brilliant way. And I'm always fascinated by families, and I'm from a big family, she's from a big family. I love the dynamic and the different characters that are in families. So I suppose that's a lot of what I've been writing. I'm also just really interested with just the stories we tell, just, you know, in social settings, you know, again, in families, the stories that someone goes, oh, tell that one, you know, the one. And which happens a lot in my family. So yeah, and I've been kind of inspired as well, because I'm studying to eventually, far in the future, to become a counsellor. And I think it, you know, even just this very fundamental stuff that I'm doing at the moment, which is really, really the very baby steps in the whole process. It teaches you to look at people and listen to them in a different way.
Yeah, so what inspires me is kind of, I've been sort of racking my brains while everyone else speaks, because just with the masters and like with the nature of the work, it's so much about craft and like about, I suppose, like learning how to be a writer, how to be a writer. So I'm kind of far away from the reasons why I actually started writing in the first place. But I think the absurdity of life is something that has fascinated me since I was like 17 and reading Camus for A-levels. And that's never really, like, philosophically, never really gone away. So kind of crops up everywhere in my writing. Sometimes it might be an absurd perspective, a non-human perspective or something like that. Or, oh, I don't know, like local stories. What you said about Deirdre, what you said about you know, like families telling stories and like that kind of oral tradition that we all get to experience. I always feel like I'm shit at that. Like like I'll come away from an evening or like a party, or I'll be sitting down thinking about something to write, and I'll know that my dad told a great story last week, or mum has this one that she always tells, but like I can't write it. Like it doesn't work on page in the same way that it does in an evening.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's a hard one. It's I find sometimes you have you have a story that you've told so many times sometimes, and then someone says, "Oh, tell that story," or you start telling a story, and somebody goes, "Oh, that's a good one," and then
Story
you
ruined.
tell it, and it's just shite, and you've missed a key part, or you end up going, "And she was his auntie,"
Yeah.
and people are like, oh, okay, and you're like, that is good. It is good. So yeah, sometimes things don't really translate.
Yeah. But yeah, it would be a great, like, you know, obviously there's so much of that, and it would be great to use more of that in writing. I just haven't really figured out how yet.
Brought up, my ethics lecturer brought up the fact that he'd seen a ghost really randomly in the middle of a lecture 3 weeks ago. I haven't stopped thinking about it since, and I want him to tell the story. And I think ghost stories are another ones that really fit into that oral tradition, where you're like, you know, stuff that makes you feel weird, or like stuff that's a wee bit uncanny, and you're just like, is that real, or is it, you know, made a little bit more mythological in the sort of retelling of it. But this is an anecdote that isn't related to that thing about my lecture, but my flatmate in Dublin is from Delhi, and I had the privilege of telling him the story of Finn McCool for the first time, because he'd never heard of it. He was like,
Amazing.
I was talking about how, like, I always say, like, the Irish are storytelling people, and he was like, okay, tell me the story. I was like, Finn McCool. Okay, let's talk about the Giant's Causeway. But he was like captivated in a way that a child is whenever they hear it for the first time. It was really like nice to be able to like be the first time. But I realize whenever, I don't know whether other people have this, more so in conversation than whenever I'm performing, I have like my storytelling voice, and it sort of just is a stronger version of my accent. I like settle into it, and I'm like, right, okay. And I'm like, who is this character who's telling the story? I don't know who she is. She speaks slower and with a thicker accent than I do, naturally. But yeah.
I suppose we've all said what is sort of inspiring us. Is there anything else that you want to add on?
Oh yes. Thinking about this while listening to all of you chat as well. The thing that always interests me from I've been no age is the concept of redemption and the concept of melancholy, but like stuff that's like so towing the line between happiness and sadness, like, is my favorite tone of anything. Like stuff that you're like, this is just a little story, why does it make me want to cry, like deep inside my soul? And it will be something really simple. And I think there's a certain, this is so abstract and so like hoity-toity, so I'm sorry, there's a certain feeling that certain works of literature and certain bits of music make me feel, and I want to be able to write in a way that brings about that feeling. And that's so specific to me because I don't know whether anyone else sees the connection between things. But like I had mentioned earlier, the last book I just finished reading at the weekend there was Everything is Illuminated, and that's something that is so painfully sad, but there's hopefulness in it as well. And I think, I don't know whether this is something I've diagnosed myself, like, I think I really enjoy culturally Jewish art and music, because one of my favorite musicians and songwriters is Regina Spektor, and I think she captures stories in the same way that like Jonathan Safran Foer and Nicole Krauss do, and they're all sort of American from like first or second generation immigrants, and I think it's very interesting. That is something that I found that connects with things. I don't know whether that's actually just me trying to find a connection.
Because you've reminded me of the thing that I've really been enjoying recently, like so much.
This is going to be the perfect place to tie everything up.
So Joni Mitchell's Blue album, 1971. And I was like speaking to friends about it. I just won't stop talking about it, even though it's 50 years old next year. I was speaking to friends about it on Friday night, and I was talking about that, that feeling, which is the blues, which is the joy of, it's like happiness in sadness, or the joy of sadness. And exactly like what you're talking about there is like, it's one of the best feelings ever, but it also doesn't really make sense that it's a good feeling.
It kind of stings, but you're like,
Yeah.
I like this.
Yeah, and like my teenage years was just like Regina Spektor all the way through. And it's that feeling, it's marvelous, yeah.
A night walk through Docklands. El tiempo es lento. Streetways cobble beneath cold toes, drawing dreams of memories. Cabeza llena. Luna courts my ear, and I remember, con añoranza, her whispered canto. Lloro linda, la noche es larga.
A gift from God. How can I blame him that he clutches to his bosom a breaking, broken form, incapable of simplicity, a maze of rudimentary complexity, when from here I can hear the soft beat of his heart. Bocas Ladia, heartbeats are healing. His, full of strength and simplicity, not weighed down with feeling, a heart free to any fireside guest, but closed to the eye beating.
A night walk through Docklands. El tiempo es lento. Streetways cobble beneath cold toes, drawing dreams of memories. Cabeza llena. Luna courts my ear, and I remember, con añoranza, her whispered canto. Lloro linda, la noche es larga.
A gift from God. How can I blame him that he clutches to his bosom a breaking, broken form, incapable of simplicity, a maze of rudimentary complexity, when from here I can hear the soft beat of his heart. Bocas Ladia, heartbeats are healing. His, full of strength and simplicity, not weighed down with feeling, a heart free to any fireside guest, but closed to the eye beating between my brows, to the heart beneath my breast. Bocas Ladia. And though at one with his Emer at times, he hails of the Lennon she, baptized in music and magic and mischief, enthralling, yet like a child innocently adoring. Bocas Ladia. What do I tell you of this love nurtured in my breast, or of the temperance I reach when you hold me, my pasture, folded into your chest, tight and safe while I string tie the cracks of my heart? Bocas Ladia. You make happiness simple. The keys are held in your smile, in the nooks of your dimples, reminding me once more of innocent song. Bocas Ladia. Can I tell you you saved me? As I curl on bedsheets and you put on the kettle, I can but let you settle with me, who loves, though entirely, though harshly, reliably. I dream not that we are one, but two, separate souls eternally tied. Bocas Ladia. Thank God for you. Astrucan. Among the ashes plays a child's shadow. Black as tar, she forces herself below me. A fading tan harks back to darker times, challenges my own porcelain glaze. My tongue lies dumb and heavy, weighted in decades of silence, passed from bone to living muscle, dense with disparity and wasting words. A loose-lipped smile of patriotic pride outweighs uncertainty uncertainly. Saoirse sits, her back to me as she dances numb hands above and beneath the light from the dying embers, out of reach.
A borrowed girl. These flames that coil from roots to tips are not mine. Imposing, bold, wild and borrowed. Lent, fire from plant, stolen. So this is me. Who am I but the girl with head ablaze, embracing, selecting, a borrowed identity?
Only jealousy. Closed doors and covered eyes shield from sight, but he splits sheets with her instead. Although we parted tenderly beneath ancient stone and Morris rose mere moments since, his eyes departing fix instead a gold-dipped form, as separating autumn falls seducing mystery. Orsino overlooking dampens skin that mirrors sky, clothed in mist, her gilding framed by a weeping curtain, tributaries of mine eyes. He never would resist. Under streams of Glencar, he loses Ema and the world for a kiss. Dear, written by Ella Hyland. I wonder what it might be like to see as you see, through a doughy lens. I wonder if I might wrap my flesh around your slinky spine and sit. Would I fall supple and silent? Or would I run as you run, needing nothing, only that softness of the air that reddens my cheeks? I look at you and I want nothing. I wonder, do you look back and wander back? I take you in how I might take in a friend on a lazy Sunday morning, wanting nothing. I wonder, could I look doughy-eyed upon the world, so I could see only the shyness of another soul and not mistake it for ignorance or arrogance, shy as a deer in our passing of information from our temples to moving lips, soft as a deer in our desire to have our body moulded into by another, pacifying our loneliness with the wetness of creation. Could I be as simple as this? Could I be? If I was as I could be, I wonder would I find it is the way that I already am. When I was young, my mother said to me, "The men are right, my dear. It is sweet and dignified to live a quiet, pretty life. Surely that way you will find a husband. But let me tell you a story." One night, long ago, when the waxing moon rested on that narrow slip between earth and sky, and the tide pulled at the shore, an old woman guided her granddaughter through the legs that had carried her during the months she could not carry herself. The warm night air blanketed her. The rooks fell silent in their nests. It was as if the night paused, just briefly, and held the moment. A child's cry barely broke the silence beneath the stars before the evening rustling flooded back to conceal the sound. The girl grew quickly, and it became clear that she was no ordinary child. In the mornings she would rush to hand fresh oranges to the men as they left the village for work, her cheeks fresh as the morning dew. All afternoon she sat quietly and neatly, playing prettily in the shade. When evening came and the men returned, she leapt to greet them, bringing a smile to each face she kissed. Never a word passed her lips out of turn. All the men would tell their sons, "That is the kind of girl you want to marry." And all the women would say to their daughters, "You must be more like her." And she was well regarded throughout the place. When the time came, she found a husband with ease, and was soon bearing her own flock. She taught her girls to be sweet and dignified, like their mother. Before too long, she was an old woman, guiding her own grandchildren onto the fresh sand. She lived a long time, and then she died. That is the end of her story, for though she died sweet and dignified, she died nonetheless. A pebble tumbling into still water creates a tide of ripples, right to the edge. But what a splash the boulder makes.
I'm gonna leave it there. If anyone who has been watching is interested in chatting to any of these lovely people or myself about any of this stuff further, everyone's Instagrams and stuff will be available somewhere. I'm not sure yet now because it's Tuesday and the stream's on Friday, so it'll have worked out by then. But yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed the readings, and that it made you think. And if you are someone who is interested in writing or interested in talking about writing, please don't hesitate to, if you're looking for a group of people, we're very much available. We've been thrown together by fate itself, and it's been really nice sort of getting to know people. But yeah, if anyone watching the stream is in any way encouraged, that's what we hope that you do. If you enjoyed the literary stream, please remember that our Ko-fi page is open for donations, and writers don't get paid that much for their writing. A lot of the time you have to pay to submit things, so I'm not begging, but I'm begging. If you have any spare change in your pocket, please send it our way. Thank
In
you.
the words of Blind Boys, price of a pint or a cup of coffee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So please, and yeah, thank you and good night.